ocular cortex even aspires to functionality, you've long since caught wise to the fact that the current state of AAA gaming is sadder than a children's party clown with colostomy. Indeed, since soaring to dizzying commercial heights in the industry explosion of 2007, we hit what I've since unflaggingly labeled a second gaming crash in 2008. And if you watched my two-fisted rants on the subject in the 20s 12 and 13 respectively, you know by crash, I don't mean coasting to a near-complete stop followed by a tender fender bender. I mean doing a faceplant in a Paris tunnel with Princess Di riding shotgun, furiously pursued by the British Secret Service. I mean paparazzi. And while the four remaining members of the video game press have been in sempiternal denial on the subject, one need only apply the criteria of the original gaming crash to conclude in the affirmative. The original gaming crash didn't decimate all of gaming in a single Christmas calamity. Hell, even Atari survived the early 80s, albeit in a state so pitiable their E3 presentations have had a 1-900 number for the Christian Children's Fund on screen ever since. Atari can't afford to pay attention at this point. No, the qualifications for a crash are quite simple. Major companies close, and software sales slide off a bridge like an Oldsmobile in Chappaquiddick.
What should we ask it first, Dad?
Oh, well, there's something I've always wanted to ask. Will Ted Kennedy ever become president? Oh, I guess not, eh, kid?
That's it, RazörForce. Print, cut, cope. And from the demolition and decease of one of the industry's largest publishers, THQ, in 2013, to software revenues so low, Ben Shapiro could almost reach them with a stepladder, not by a single commercial qualifier does the 6-year stretch between 2008 and 2014 fail to satisfy the criteria of a crash. I don't say this to rub it in or belabor a point I made over a damn decade ago, although gloating is one of my love languages. But rather, I want to establish an immutable fact which gaming websites have since made a 9-to-5 occupation out of professionally ignoring. And I need to do so for one simple reason. In many appreciable respects, the industry as a whole never functionally recovered. I mean, sure, shares and revenue slowly rebounded after the PS4 and Xbone bounded onto the scene. At a single glance, it might even appear to have exceeded the success of the 2007 industry. In fact, in some ways, it sort of kind of did. GTA 4 became one of the top-selling games of all time in 2008, shifting over 25 million units, which sounds superb until you consider GTA 5 sold over 800% better, which is nearly the same percentage by which it's embarrassingly overrated. I said what I said! Blow it at your ass! But deeming an entire industry healthy because a blockbuster Rockstar game sold like chocolate-coated crack is like saying Disney's doing fine because Avengers Endgame printed more money than the Fed. No shit, Shilbert. The first gaming crash had its very own seismic successes amid the broiling inferno. Hell, the early to mid-80s crash is also the period that put PC gaming on the map, particularly in Europe. It didn't change that gaming as a whole couldn't find $1 in a stripper's G-string at the time. More accurately, it didn't change the most immutable fact of all, one still brutally afflicting the industry at large: the steadily diminishing number of annual AAA titles. Don't believe me? In 2007, a single year, gamers received Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty 4, Mass Effect, Halo 3, BioShock, Super Mario Galaxy, Portal, Manhunt 2, Metroid Prime 3, Crysis, Uncharted, Ace Combat 6, God of War 2, Team Fortress 2, and don't forget long dead hit franchises in subgenres the industry can no longer sustainably support, such as Rock Band and Guitar Hero 3, and that was just AAA releases off the top of my dome. Conan, Hellgate London, and a hell of a lot more might be added to the list if I really took a tea break to think about it. And remember, the middle market was still making waves with the likes of The Witcher, Stalker, and Kane and Lynch. The sales of single 2014 titles may absolutely body the bestsellers of 2007, but by every other metric under the searing sky orb we abide beneath, the industry was healthier, and by a hell of a lot.
But the other two pilots are just fine. They're at the controls flying the plane.
free to pursue a life of religious fulfillment.
Conversely, in 2023, we got a remake of Resident Evil 4, System Shock, and Dead Space, a continuation of a reboot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a DLC for a flop called Cyberpunk, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Street Fighter 6, Assassin's Creed Mirage, the improbably bad Spider-Man 2, and that's about all I can recall in the increasingly crap category of 2023 AAA tentpole releases. 2007 gave us more releases than a $5 for $1 massage parlor. In 2024, new AAA IPs are harder to find than Jim Sterling's belly button. Instead, what emerged, as it so often has in the recent past, was a deluge of AA masterpieces that damn near dominated both streaming and sales across the Monopoly board. Ad infinitum, Liza P. Hell, the game of the year wasn't Final Fantasy XVI or Alan Woke, but Bargain Basement Bear Sex Sim, Baldur's Gate 3, and DSP's right hand hasn't been the same since. You can cry, cope, fall to the floor, and make spurg angels in the snow till spring. You can point to the 2014 rebound, skyrocketing game budgets, and stink pieces aplenty, but the ineffable fact remains unmoved. An industry in ascent makes more product, not less. Ask your local fentanyl addict, provided he isn't busy being the sitting president. Give or take an H. Do games cost more to make? Sure as shit they do, along with absolutely everything else on this spinning blue murder marble. So do movies, and Hollywood still makes entirely too many of those. Hell, most narcoleptic Netflix dramas cost more than a movie to make, and they pinch one of those turds out almost hourly. If expense and size of production is the only issue, an industry with more money than a Saudi oil baron, with studios staffed with a standing army of flannel-plated, soy-bearded, black-frame glasses-wearing sex pests, ought to be making more games than Milton Bradley, bitch! Brace your buttholes, console kiddies, because the following red pill is a sizable suppository. The industry didn't so much recover from the crash of '08 as slap a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. Rather than address the creative bankruptcy and omnipresent sequelitis that by 2008 was clearly afflicting a fledgling industry beaming with unbridled hubris after overtaking Hollywood in annual revenue, they doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and octupled down on the self-same syndrome, circling the corporate wagons to pop higher sales on fewer titles, and the result was the shrinking maelstrom of mediocrity we're up to our armpits in at present. And whether it's more meager disappointments like the Sucktacular Spedfall or a big veiny flop like Forspoken year after year, release after release, the logic behind the formula of bigger budgets, fewer games is harder to understand than Biden on Novocaine. Sure, the Switch sold more plastic bricks than Lego, but when hasn't Nintendo existed in a parallel profitable universe? Look, when the PS5 can sell 50 million vanilla tacos but still be labeled by Sony as a financial disappointment because game sales are softer than Nick Fuentes at a wet t-shirt contest, it's time for you, every unctuous YouTube clickbait merchant pogging their way through the console wars, and anyone at all with ears to hear to finally, at long last, admit the morbid truth. The industry's future prospects are somewhere between a Kennedy, a Clinton witness, and a Boeing whistleblower. At this point, Ubisoft are hanging their toilet paper out to dry. EA's in debt to the sperm bank, Sony can't afford to eat their words, and burglars are breaking into Xbox HQ to leave money. I'm Razor Fist. Good night and Godspeed.